Welcome back to the Modcast YouTube channel. Today we're going to be working on a 2009 Tacoma, doing some power steering work and potentially some suspension work. Here we have Project Honeybee. If you want to know more about that, please leave a comment down below. However, today we're going to be focusing on the power steering system primarily. I've had to top this off a couple of times. You can see everything's very grimy down in here. We've got some seepage and some leaks all throughout the system. So we're going to move right on to replacing as much of it as we can. We have the power steering pump here, some new return hose, the return tube, the new set of lines will go onto, which I'll show you in a minute. This is the clamp for the line that goes on there. These are the bolts for the pump. And we've got the high pressure banjo bolt and gasket, the most important seal on the entire system. Granted, you don't want any leaks, but if that were to leak, you would have significantly reduced steering capabilities. Got a new OE Toyota steering rack and lines. We're going to start by draining the power steering system as best as we can using a vacuum tool that's typically for bleeding brakes. However, I've found it's similar to a Mighty Vac, very useful for getting other fluids out as long as you clean the tool when you're done. Just to show you what we're dealing with here, we've got some crappy, crusty old coils with a spacer on top. So we're going to be eliminating that with those struts there. This rack, I did grease these years ago, so they are going to break free. However, it's starting to seep up in here. We're going to get that sorted out. I do have some new apron seals for right here. That'll help with some of the wind noise that we've been getting. This truck is very dirty. It's salt season in New England, so I did put a new intermediate shaft in this not too long ago. You can see it's already starting to get rusty because of our inclement weather. As you can see, the lines are out. I had to cut the high pressure line at the fitting because it was seized in the fitting and I got brand new ones, so there's really no point in saving it. I still got to take, I don't know if you can see those in there, but I got to take those out before it'll come out because you'd need them out just for the clearance. We have taken the belt off, got the tie rods disconnected, loosened the front diff. I haven't decided if I'm taking it out yet or not. We'll see. I may just jack up the engine. I got the bracket off for the wiring harness on the pump. There is a ground with a 10mm on the back that you need to take off. The plug at the top, and then the high pressure and return lines need to come off. Belt is taken off, so I'm going to loosen up, get the pump out. There's 2 bolts. You got to go through the front of the pump to get to them. You can actually see on the brand new one what we're dealing with. You can see those holes right there. You just spin it until you can get to it with an extension, short one, and ratchet, and 14mm, and it's really that easy. Show you where we're at. Rack is nice and loose, ready to come out, minus the differential that's still in my way. So there's some brackets on top. You gotta take the bolts out of. They're 12mm. Unplug the actuator, get the vent line off, and everything kind of just sits up above, like you can see there. So I'm gonna get the diff out, and then I should be able to pop this thing right out of there, and then it's back together. Rack is out. Suspended the differential, couldn't get it all the way out because this axle was fighting me. Not really looking to fight with it. So this is the vent hose line that came off the top. There is a rubber piece up there on top of the diff. I got one axle out. You can see I kind of had to rig it a little bit with some pull straps to keep this out of the way, but it makes it a little easier to pull the axle. Just got to be careful going back in. So now we're gonna make sure everything gets cleaned up of all the fluids, and then we're gonna put the new stuff in. This truck also has a front differential spacer. That's because of the lift kit, to try to regain some of that CV axle angle, so when you put it in four-wheel drive it doesn't bind up like crazy. And also a sway bar drop kit, just like a relatively inexpensive one from, I believe, Supreme Suspensions is the company. So it just bolts 2 spots on either side. That goes to the factory sway bar mount, and then you are then essentially moving it down and forward slightly to account for the lift kit, to maintain the same geometry and handling characteristics. So other than that, everything's pretty stock. You don't have to mess with the sway bar links themselves. I do need some new ones, so we'll attack those on another day though, because they're pretty easy to do by themselves. Got the rack back in, differentials back in, got the intermediate shaft hooked up. I just want to note, I did take the top 2 out so I could slide it along that shaft to get it off of the main steering gear and back on. It makes your life a lot easier. I got the sway bar put back in, drop kit installed. So now we're gonna focus on getting the knuckles bolted back up and get the lines in here, and then we'll hook up the tie rods and put a pump in this thing, and we should be in good shape. want to recap as to what we've done so far. So the steering rack has been replaced. You can see a fresh tie rod there. It has not been screwed into the outer yet. I've got the lower control arm loosened because I've decided to go ahead and finish up the front end by doing the front struts, and then the rear shocks are relatively simple. Haven't filled it up with fluid yet, haven't hooked up the hoses, so we still have that to do. I do have to top off the differential because I had to kind of turn it to get it out of the way so that I could get the rack out and get the new rack in. You may see that I am missing a strut here. It's down there. See, they're really rusty, not great shape, which led to me needing these bad boys right here. So the backside nut on this decided that it was going to spin the stud that it bolts onto when I was trying to undo it. So I ended up having to grind away at the nut, or what was left of it, and then torch it out of there. Not a huge deal, but if you don't have torches, be wary. Those studs will spin if the nut seizes to it. The grooves to keep them pressed in there, you know, and prevent them from spinning aren't very deep. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get the other strut out and then get the new struts in, and then get on to the rear shocks. Well, that one came out a lot easier. Had it soaking in penetrant, so that definitely helps. One little thing to note, I don't have it done yet. You can see there's still some tension on it, wound up in this bushing, but when I put these new struts in, you should always loosen this, and when you retighten everything, it should all be at ride height, so on the ground. I'm going to go ahead and do all of that on the alignment rack. Obviously the lowers are easier to do, so I'm just going to get it snugged up, lift it up to my working height, and then do the tops on the alignment rack, and then the bottoms I'll do when I'm underneath adjusting caster and camber. We're going to go ahead to the back now. We're going to get these old original off-road Bilstein Tacoma shocks out, and we're going to put some upgraded 5100 series Tacoma shocks in. So I'm going to go ahead and get to work on that. Your rear shocks are installed. The top torque spec is 15 foot-pounds. The bottom, I'm not sure yet because I'm going to do that over on the rack like the other loaded bushings, because there is a little bushing at the bottom of these shocks. But yeah, got them installed. The other ones were pretty bad. The driver's side was kind of frumpy, if you will. I was able to just kind of push it in by hand and it didn't really spring back out. So now on to the front end. We're going to get the new struts pre-assembled because our strut compressor is actually currently broken. So I got pre-assembled ones and they're going to sit nicely right there. So we're going to go ahead and get those installed. All right, we're in pretty good shape here. I got the old fluid drained out of the diff. In hindsight, I probably should have done that before, but I wasn't counting on having to pull the axle because usually you can jack up the engines on these, but the engine mount bolts are pretty crusty, so I wasn't going to go that route. And by then it was too late, so we went the way that we did. Front struts are in, just got to tighten the tops. And I had taken the front drive shaft off. That is now torqued back down to spec. So we're gonna get this filled up with some fluid, flush out all the old crap first, and then tighten it up with some new stuff. And then we'll get the tops at least snugged down, and we'll do final torque on the ground, like I said, of everything. And then we will be looking here for power steering fluid. And that's really it. Just got some hoses to put up there. Everything's looking good. So I'm gonna time lapse that out and then show you the alignment.
At some point, I turned the audio off on the GoPro, so I have to record this after the fact. However, you may have seen in the time-lapse that I was priming the system by turning the wheel back and forth. Before even starting the vehicle, I just pour some fluid in there, turn it back and forth, pour some more fluid in there, turn the key, let the engine turn over a little bit, prime the pump. I do not let it start. I do that 3 or 4 times and then make sure I'm topping it off in between. And then after that, it's good to start the vehicle and just make sure the fluid level is good, turn it back and forth, full lock to make sure the entire system is filled. You can tell the truck definitely sits pretty high in the front now. Obviously at this point I hadn't retorqued those upper control arms yet, so that's still a step I have to do, uppers and lowers. Torque those rear shocks on the ride height, but it's a lot easier when you're on the rack. I do have some rear leaf springs that I have to put in this truck. That'll be a separate video because I'm doing some aftermarket bushings in those leaf springs. They are Toyota leaf springs. I did not get an upgraded leaf pack, but I will be doing a new lift block setup in the back with those new leaf springs. So you can definitely look forward to seeing that content later on. Please definitely give us a like if you want more content like this. Maybe subscribe. It definitely helps out the channel. We like to keep it growing. We'll keep doing stuff like this. Loosening the lower control arms here, I did the uppers and now I'm settling the suspension so I can make sure everything is at the correct ride height when I torque all of these bushings down. We're going to do the same thing for the tops of the struts. We're going to make sure those are nice and tight, torque to spec. Same thing, upper control arms, everything's getting tightened, going over all my work, making sure nothing is left loose or only slightly tightened, which I guess is the same thing. But we're going to do the rear shocks, make sure those are nice and tight, and then it's on to doing the adjustments for the final alignment. At this point, I've measured everything. It's time to adjust the caster and camber. So I go ahead and I start with the camber, get that all dialed in. They're they are connected in most vehicles, but in this case they are directly connected. There's 2 eccentrics on the lower control arms that you use to dial these in for alignments. So generally I do the same. I do one side and then I do the other side. Sometimes you have to go back and you gotta even them out. It's not an exact science, but it is a bit of a process. I do like to make sure these are perfectly set when they leave. It just usually leads to a better customer experience. So you go through, you adjust all the caster and camber, and then after that it's you do the toe and then you do a caster swing, and if your measurements come out good, then you're good to go. Sometimes you do have to go back after the caster swing at the end in order to fix the caster just a little bit. Sometimes your toe measurements are off quite a bit, especially after replacing so many parts. But in this case, it was actually a one and done. Everything went really well. I have actually aligned this truck twice after doing this, and each time the toe was only off by hundredths of a degree. So everything held up really nicely. We've put about 7,000 miles on the truck since we did this job, and I can tell you that the ride quality of the vehicle has significantly improved. Stiffness, handling, all of that is much improved. So I really thank you guys for joining us for this video and sticking around if you've made it this far. If you're trying to do this yourself, it is definitely a bit of a project, so you got to clear a lot in your schedule especially if you don't have a lift. So I wish you luck. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been the Modcast YouTube channel. See you next time.